So this is the second time I have tried to record this video. I did the whole thing. I came to edit and upload it, and it turns out I must have failed to press record. So that is why this is coming a little bit later than usual. And what I thought I would do this week, I haven't got huge amounts of things to show you, either in terms of haul or in terms of progress. The only thing I've really been working on in a yarny sort of way is my crochet blanket. I have finished all the squares on that, and I'm in the middle of joining them together. It's quite tedious, but I'm trying to make myself do a couple of rows of squares stitched, I say stitched together, I'm crocheting them together. A couple of rows every day, and then I'll do the rows joined together. And then I will be ready for the border. So I'll probably show you that at the point where it's all joined together, and then talk about the border that I'm going to do. But at the moment, there's just not very much to see. And because I've been trying to focus on doing that, I've not done a whole lot else. So what I thought I would show you is what I have done, which is sort out my yarn stash. So what you can see at the moment, this IKEA unit is more or less the only place I'm allowed to store yarn. So there are two exceptions that you can see on the bottom right. There's a basket which has got acrylic yarn in it. That is mostly the yarn that I'm currently using for the crochet blanket that I'm making, but it has got a few balls of leftover yarn of that same sort. So things that are in progress are obviously allowed to be elsewhere, because that's not storage. The other thing you'll see in front is that Cath Kidston handbag, the navy bag with the pink floral pattern on it. That is not exactly in progress. What I will show you during this video as well is my current unfinished objects. And there are actually not loads, but there are a few things that are in there that I haven't given up on. I will finish at some point, but I am not working on them at the moment. So there are those things. There's what you can see in the drawers, and I'm going to get the drawers out and show you. There's the decorative storage in the bowls and baskets on top of that unit. And then I'm just going to move you around. There's also some decorative storage. It's a little tour of Rose's house, coming round past my desk, in those bags that you can see hanging from the wall. I made those bags on a workshop at Unit 12. I'll put a link to that below. It's a lovely gallery and studio space and workshop space near me. And I screen printed the fabrics for that at the workshop, and then we made them into these cute little hanging bags. So I have 5 of them, and I use them to keep lovely balls of yarn in there. But other than that, I'm not supposed to keep yarn anywhere else. When I did my tidying up, and you'll know this if you follow me on social media anywhere, I did discover that at one point I had secretly stashed, I say secretly, I mean, it's only me, I'm not going to hide it from anyone else, but I did find a whole sweater quantity worth of yarn hidden in a drawer that's really only supposed to have books and things in it. So I have taken it out, and it's that big pile you see on top of the left-hand column. So this is all the yarn I have. There's the yarn in those little decorative bags, there's yarn for the work in progress, and then there's the yarn that's stored here. I have done sorting out of this, as I say. I've reorganised it, and I've also identified some yarn that I'm going to give away that I don't think I'm ever going to use, and that is in the Hobbycraft bag on the left-hand side there. So I'm going to move you around, and then I'm going to start showing you what's in all of those baskets and boxes. So what you can see is I've sorted them by colour. I haven't always done this with my yarn. Quite often I like to sort them according to the kind of yarn, the sort of fibre content or the thickness or the sort of purpose that I might use it for. But this time I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do it by colour and see how we get on. By far the most yarn I have is fingering weight yarn, or what we traditionally in the UK call 4-ply yarn, even if it's not technically 4-ply. or sometimes you'll hear it just called sock yarn. There is some thicker yarn. Some of this is double knitting weight. Some of this is possibly sport weight. I've got some sport weight in other yarns as well, and I've got a little bit of lace weight as well, but typically what I mostly knit with is that sort of fingering 4-ply sock weight yarn. So these are all the blues and greens. There's a little bit of cream in there. Some of these are quite interesting. This is a sort of hemp yarn, which is yeah, it sort of knits up quite nicely into things that you might use like pan scrubbers. I'm not sure I would use it to wear, but possibly you could. There's lots of little remnants of things. Some of this is a yarn that I hand dyed, and I knitted this up. I made it into a Marin scarf from Isolde, and then I just didn't have quite enough for the last few stripes, and it ended up being too small, so I undid it. Some of this is West Yorkshire Spinners sock yarn that's designed that it will knit up into a sort of Fair Isle pattern. Some of it is self-striping in here. Some of this I've already knitted, so I've got a whole hoodie that I knitted out of this, and I've got 2 skeins left of it. I'm not quite sure what to do. These 3 skeins here I made into a poncho, which I still really love, but as you can see I've still got a lot of those yarns left. There's some specialty yarns here, so you know, lots of scraps, some in quite substantial quantities, some that are basically full skeins, and some that are much smaller amounts. So that is my blues and greens. Okay, no surprise to anyone, a whole drawer full of pinks and some reds. So this is quite interesting. This is what's called a sock blank, and you can see it's already knitted. It will have been machine knitted. It's dyed. This is hand painted. This came from the Yarn Yard, who I don't think is trading anymore, and it's in beautiful sort of pinks and oranges and reds. And the thing about it is, it's actually 2 strands of yarn that are knitted together. And why would you do that? Why would you knit those 2 strands together and then dye it? Well, it's so that when you undo it, you've got 2 identical hand dyed skeins of yarn, because it's quite difficult, obviously, if you're hand dyeing, you know, it's sort of like watercolor painting. You can't do it exactly the same twice. And if you're making a pair of socks, you sort of do want it to be the same twice. I mean, not necessarily, I'm not that fussy, but you know, there is something quite nice about having a matching pair of socks. So I have already knitted a pair of socks out of this, and this is just the remnant, but I'm keeping it like that. It would be really nice, for example, if I decide to do a colour work pair of socks or pair of gloves, for example, and use this as one of the contrast colours, and you'd still have that lovely hand-dyed sort of colour work showing, contrasted against something else. So that's that. Some of this, there's a lot of this red yarn is from, I went through a phase of making football socks for people, and they mostly were Manchester United fans, and they got red. So again, it's a similar sort of mix. This is some Jameson's Shetland, I think, that I did some colour work with. I made a scarf. Maybe I'll show you that one day. Maybe I'll show you all my hand knitted scarves one day. This is a sort of mohair left over from something from years ago. I've got a little bit of ribbon yarn here. I slightly put off using this because I feel like it's going to be an absolute nightmare to wind it into a proper ball. It's not in a knot yet, but as soon as I get my fingers on it, it probably will be. This is also that hemp yarn that I was showing you. I got some in the pink as well, because obviously, what else is interesting in here? These are some yarns that I dyed. I like to do my dyeing of yarn with Kool-Aid. Now, you can't buy Kool-Aid here in the UK, but it's the kind of thing that in America you can buy in a dollar store. So I bought some when I was there, but also if I have a friend who's going, I might quite often say to them, oh, if you've got room in your suitcase, a few packets of Kool-Aid. The thing about Kool-Aid that's great is it's basically just food colouring and citric acid. It's the American equivalent of squash in the UK. So in the UK, you buy a bottle of squash and you dilute it, or cordial if you're being posh. But the thing about cordial and squash is they already have the sugar added. But Kool-Aid is unsweetened. And the idea is when you mix up your own drink, you add as much sugar as you want, which makes it perfect for dyeing yarn, because what you need for dyeing animal-based fibres, so sheep's wool, but also alpaca or even silk, is the dye and acid to set it, which is what you've got in Kool-Aid. And it will tell you, or you can look up online, charts of what colorants in what quantities are in each flavour. So it's basically just red, yellow and blue in different flavours. And so this was a nice one that I did a sort of hand painted version. You can see it's got some green and yellow, as well as the sort of pinks and some lavender in there. And then this one I kept much more within the same sort of pink purple family. And those are both stock weight yarn, and you can see I've knitted some of this up already. That's only about half a skein, and I'm not sure I've used that one at all yet. I might have done a bit. So then my pinks, and here are the purples. And again, the same sort of mix of things. Some of these, this is left over from a cardigan that I made. I've got several colours of that, and I did a lovely cardigan. I really enjoyed wearing that. This is a lot of my yarns I buy from a company called Posh Yarn. This is Posh Yarn, and she names all her different bases. So the sort of based on the fibre content after girls' names, and this was Rosalind. So obviously I had to buy that. What else have we got in here? Yeah, this is a lovely, this is also from Posh Yarn. This is silk. Yeah, various different things in here. Lots of these in different, quite variegated colourways. I really love this. I think I made a small scarf from that. I didn't have loads of it, and I'm not sure if I still got it. I might have given it away. All sorts of things here. Little yarn that's got little sort of tweedy bits in it. I made a cardigan last year, stripy cardigan, out of oddments of this this particular yarn in all sorts of different colours, and I was quite short on quantity. So by the end I was doing the sleeves, and I had sort of divided up all the colourways I had into two so that I could do the sleeves matching. And by the time I got to the cuff of the sleeves, that was all the yarn that I had left. So, but I do love it. I wear that cardigan a lot. Good. So then those are all my sort of scraps of things. And I do always keep scraps, however small they are. Well, I'd love to keep them however small they are. If it's less than about 3 feet, then I do get rid of it. But you just never know when you might want a little bit for a colourwork thing, or to stitch something up, or a textile project or whatever. So I'm not very good at throwing things away. Now this drawer is, hopefully some of this is familiar to you if you've watched my previous videos. This is my hand spun yarn, and some of this is hand dyed. So this is more of the Kool-Aid dyeing with this sort of speckledy approach. This was some dyeing that I did in a workshop, also at Unit 12 actually, with different natural dyes. Some of this was walnut and onion skins, and I'm not sure if something else, but so interesting bits there. Bit more Kool-Aid, bit more Kool-Aid. I'm not sure about this one. I honestly can't remember whether this is something I dyed. It might well be. It's got that sort of colour to it, but I don't know. It might be that I bought it and I don't remember. So then we've got random bit of ribbon in there. These two bits of hand spun that I did this summer. This was on my new wheel. This was in Scotland, the browner one. This was finishing off what was on the old wheel. And then these are all leftovers from previous projects. And I'm just trying to decide whether I've got enough from what I've already got here to make the skirt that I want to, or whether I need to spin up some more for that. But that's all in there. So these are all sort of yarns that in some way I have created, either spinning them or dyeing them. I don't think there's any that I've done both. I would not feel confident dyeing pre-spun fibre. The potential to end up with just a great big ball of felt is very high. I suppose I could spin undyed yarn and then dye it, but I haven't. We've now got 2 drawers full of yarn that has not been touched since I purchased it. And I do tend to buy yarn that comes in these skeins rather than the traditional balls. In general, if you're buying yarn from small manufacturers or small hand dyers, this is how it will come, because it's just much easier to process when it comes like this, for them to process when it comes like this, than when it comes in a ball. You can see that if you're dyeing it, you want to be able to spread it all out. Which is why I have that ball winder that you've seen in a previous video that I was using with my hand spun yarn, and that makes it up into the cakes that are easier to knit from. This sort of thing that's easier to knit from than this. Again, I can just as soon look at this as get it into a mess. So I've got these 2 skeins that were with the ones I bought in Scotland that you saw then. I've got these 2 skeins which are from Coop Knits, merino nylon. I'm trying to look what the colour is. Krypton, 1002 Krypton. There's enough there for a pair of socks. I think I was planning to use them for some colour work, but then I haven't done yet. And then everything else in here is from Posh Yarn, and there's all sorts. This is Pamela, which is suitable for sock yarn. It's got nylon in it, which is what you want for socks, but it's also got, and I do not know if you'll be able to see this, it's got sparkle in it, so that's quite fun. You will see I am always tempted by the same kinds of colours, which is a good thing for sorting it out, because I have realised I really can't buy more pink and purple yarn right now. This is Freya. This is really lovely soft merino nylon. This is, I think this is Esme. Yes. So that's just merino. I have used Esme for socks. They don't wear quite as well, but it's got such a beautiful feeling to it that I love it. What have we got here? This is Betsy sock. This is a wool silk cashmere. Again, it would make very luxurious socks, but this is lovely for a sort of scarf or a shawl or something next to the skin. This is Genie sock, like we could change the whole of history. This is a real sort of workhorse sock yarn, merino nylon. That's a sort of darker colourway than I normally use, but still pink and purple. This lovely variegated, this is also Genie, the most unlikely places. I do love the way that Posh Yarn names their colourways. They're all unrepeated colourways, so they go on sale every week with maybe 5 to 10 skeins in each colourway, and once they're gone, they're gone. This is Eleanor sock. Again, this doesn't have any nylon in it, but I've used this for socks quite often, and I really like it. It's got a different sort of texture. I don't know if you can see it. It's got a much more pronounced twist in the ply. Nearly at the bottom, this is green. This is also Eleanor sock, over fields and across the sky. Green, yeah, slightly with a bluish tinge, but basically green. This one is blue with a slightly teal greenish bit. Now this is interesting. I've not used this before. This is Alyssa sock, knocking on Atlantis doors. This is a merino silk. So it's got, I would think this will be quite hard wearing. Silk is an interesting fibre. It's very strong when you pull on it, but it's not resistant. It's not sturdy when it's being rubbed. So it's not as strong as you would think for use in socks and things. And then finally another Eleanor with the power of the sun. So, I mean, they're not all pink and purple. I've got a whole row here that's basically not pink and purple. And then a whole row that is. So, yeah. Anyway, they all fit in there. Good. And then finally, these are all in the first column. This is all the same yarn. So this was not the yarn that was hiding. I did have this where it should be. Again, this is Posh Yarn. This is Eleanor, so it's same base as Eleanor, but this is Aran weight. So it's much chunkier, and this is enough to make a winter cardigan. I think I've got my eye on a particular pattern. Can't remember the name of it, but I will put a link for you to have a look at. Right, I'm going to move all of this back, and then we'll look at the bigger drawers from the other two sections. Now, this is exciting Can you tell what it is yet? Well, it is yarn, I'll tell you that for a start. But it is very special yarn, and that's why it is in this laundry bag. This yarn is from Iceland. It's got a special name. This is Plötulopi. I think lopi is just the word for wool, I think. And this is Plötulopi. And I have it in these 3 bright colours and also quite a lot in this undyed. Now, what is special about Icelandic yarn? Well, a number of things. So obviously it's made from Icelandic sheep. Icelandic sheep, because Iceland is so remote and so cut off, it has its own breeds of animals. It has its own breed of sheep, its own breed of pony, and that, you know, they are very separate from everything else in the world. And Icelandic sheep obviously have developed to withstand very cold temperatures and very wet places. There's a lot of snow in Iceland, and that means that their yarn, their fleece, which then is made into the yarn, is very warm. And it's very warm by being very lofty. I don't know if you remember in science lessons at school thinking about insulation, and one of the best ways of insulating is with pockets of air. And this yarn has built into it a lot of air. It's very light and fluffy. I don't know if you can see there behind my hand just how fluffy that is. And in order to make the warmest garments possible from it, in Iceland, they sometimes use yarn like this. They do sometimes process it more normally, but they sometimes use yarn like this, which has not been spun. There is no twist in this yarn. And that means it is very fragile. It's easy to just pull apart, hardly any pressure at all. But it is also easy to stick back together. And that's the other thing about the Icelandic sheep, is that to keep warm, they have a lot of lanolin in them, and they're very sticky. And you can just basically stick it back together. Now, I did start knitting a little bit with this. I don't know, I think I've still got it in the bottom here, yes. Doing some colour work. So traditionally they do colour work, and it's really lovely. Let's get that out and show you. And once it's knitted up, it is a lot stronger than I think naturally when I knit. Certainly I put a little bit of twist in, but also just everything is holding together. You've got a lot more fibres there, so it does make this really lovely, light but incredibly warm fabric. And one day I shall finish knitting this. It's, you know, the only thing it can be really is a sort of wintry jacket, or I suppose you could make, yeah, I mean, I'm always hot in bed, but if you're always really cold at night, you might, a blanket made of this would be incredibly warm, that sort of thing. I guess one of the reasons I mean, I've had this for 7 years, and one of the reasons I've not got much further than this is it rarely feels like it's cold enough to want to wear it, to be honest. And when it is that cold, I don't really go out. And if I'm inside, I put the heating on. So I don't know, one day I would love to finish this. The yarn is so special. I have no regrets buying it and carting it around with me for the rest of the holiday. It was at the beginning of quite a long holiday as well. But for now, it just sits there. And because it's so easy, it's unspun, it would be very easy for it to get felted. So I like to just keep it separate and not really, you know, be rummaging around in there. Now, I always have this drawer. This drawer contains, amongst other things, some of my unfinished objects. So this one on the top, you'll recognise if you've been watching my videos. It's this cardigan that I was knitting over the summer. I was working on it over the summer. I will finish it for next summer, but for the moment, I'm going to leave it because I'm not going to wear it in the winter. So that is just sitting on one side. That is the rest of, I don't know if you remember, I was sort of retrieving some of the yarn I'm using for that cardigan from this old one that had got holes in places that couldn't really be mended. It was holes in the lace work, and that is just beyond me in terms of mending. So that's there just in case I need any more of that. And the other thing I found was this. Fans of Attic 24 may recognise the neat ripple pattern, and it was going to be a neat ripple blanket. It's not a neat ripple blanket. It's about 10 inches wide. That's not really a blanket. And honestly, I don't think I want this as a blanket anymore. It's nice, it would be really warm and thick, but I don't need any more blankets. I was using sock weight yarn held double. Most of it is West Yorkshire Spinners, although looking at it now, I think some of it is also Posh yarn. What I'm going to do, I think, and I'm quite excited about sort of being able to give this new life in a different way, is I'm going to make it into a poncho. So I've knitted a couple of ponchos in the last couple of winters, and I've really enjoyed wearing them. And the pattern that I have for them is simply a rectangle that you then join together at one end, and it gives a really nice drape to the finished poncho. I would need to do a bit more in this. I think I need to do about another 6 inches or so, but that's fine. I've definitely got yarn to do that with, and I think it'd be really nice, and then I think I'd really enjoy wearing that and feeling like it's finished. So I'm definitely going to pick this one up to do, but I just want to finish the crochet blanket first, because I will feel better once that's done. But then this winter I'm going to do that. And then in the rest of this box, there's sort of odd yarns. There's some that were quite difficult to sort by colour. There's some that are just not my usual type. Some of these sort of acrylic yarns. I've had some of these for making toy Rudolphs in previous years. This is a netting yarn that has, you know, can be used in interesting ways. Some colours that don't fit in my normal colour. Brown, black, grey. I don't have very many of those. This is an interesting yarn. This has got a steel core to it, and it's quite difficult to see in the yarn itself, but once it's knitted up, you get a fabric that has some structure to it. It's not quite rigid, but you can certainly mould it into shapes. It's very fine, so I would almost certainly use this held together with another yarn to knit with. Yeah, and some other yarn on cones. That's quite fine. You could certainly use for weaving, but excuse me, would also work for some quite fine hand knitting. So that is, as I say, not works in progress, but unfinished objects and other yarn. This is my final unfinished project, and I have to say I was quite proud of myself to realise I only had 3. I've got 1 work in progress, 3 unfinished projects, one of which I was working on until about a month ago. So there's only 2 that have been in the naughty corner for any length of time. And this one has been in the naughty corner for a year. I can get it out and show you where I've got to. Quite far is the answer. So it's a jumper, nice neckband with this little sort of wavy colour work and bobbles, nice round neck. Quite pleased with how that looked. Then I had lots of this orange yarn, and I wanted to find a way of sort of toning it down a little bit. Even I didn't feel I could quite get away with a jumper that was just this colour. And so then I also made up this kind of rainbow to do more of the sort of wavy pattern at the bottom. There we go, just caught my camera. So with also the pinks, but then this kind of rainbow from purple all the way back through to violet. So I really love that. Why is it in the naughty corner? Well, there are 2 reasons actually at this point. The first is I actually had got quite a lot further with this than you can see. I had done most of one of the sleeves, and what I had done on the sleeves is I had done a little band here of stripes using all these colours at the bottom, and then I was making pom-poms, and I inadvertently used the yarn that I got set aside. This was all scraps, so there wasn't loads of it. The yarn that I set aside to do the stripes on the other arm in pom-poms. And once you've made something into a pom-pom, there is no coming back. You know, you've got a lot of bits of yarn that are about this long. There is nothing you can do with that. So then I was like, well, what should I do? Have I got no, I really haven't got enough to reproduce it. Could I just get away with having it on one arm? I don't really think so. I don't think I'd like that. So in the end, I had to pull out the sleeve that I'd done. And that's always a bit miserable. And I always need a little bit of a break after I've done something like that before I can come back to a project. But it is now 12 months. And I have to say, I'm not coming back to this project right now. And the reason for that is that in the last 12 months, I've put on some weight and it's not going to fit me at the moment. One day, I hope it will fit me. I'm not getting rid of it and I'm not giving up on it. But I am not working on it right now. Also, I notice it has got a little hole in it, which I don't think is a moth. I think that's more likely I've caught it on something. So I might just fix that. Probably what I will also do at this point is take this sleeve off the needle and just put it on some yarn so I can retrieve the needle. So that just sits there. I've got more of the pinks here, so I could do that sort of upper arm stripe just in these rather than in the full rainbow, and that might well be what happens. And that's all just staying in there, so it doesn't get used for any more pom-poms. Anyway, that's that. And then finally, this is not yarn, this is all my knitting tools, and I thought you might just be interested to see the kind of gadgets I have, because, you know, both my grandmothers used to knit. And I think they did not have a lot of this kind of kit, and they knitted perfectly well. But a lot of these things do really help with different kinds of knitting. Some of it is just bags that I store little things. That's quite a nice sock project bag. This is my ball yarn, ball winder. You've seen that in use, and I talked about it before. It makes those sort of nice cakes of usable yarn out of the skeins that they sometimes come in. It clamps onto the edge of a work surface, and you just wind it round. Here, a couple more project bags. This is quite a fun one. Someone made this for me because I made a sock pattern which had on it sheep. See that? Sheep and rabbits and chickens. These are ducks actually, but anyway, she thought that was quite fun, and so she made me a project bag to go with it. This is one from Ellie Beth Designs UK. I really like her project bags. I have several of them in different colourways and sizes. This is the bottom of what's called a Swift, and again, if you've seen the hand spun winding video, you'll have seen this. It has two long arms that sit on top of this, and you put your skein around them and it holds them in place while you wind up the yarn. These are the pegs that hold it together and also hold the yarn on it, and they should be in a different bag, so I'm going to do that now. This is where the oh no, that one, this one I think is where the dowels live, along with various other bits and pieces. I'll put those in there. My darning mushroom, not often used but occasionally. Got a couple of pom-pom makers, which does make the making of pom-poms a lot easier than when we were with children and used to do it with cardboard. So I've got a sort of small and a medium size. Clamps that are for my loom, and also this, which is a weaving needle. I don't do a lot of weaving. I haven't done it for a long time. Maybe one day I'll get it out. And that's that. More bags. Sometimes, yeah, I like to have things in bags. This little pencil case holds, at the moment, I think it's only got cable needles in it, but also I would normally have stitch holders in here, but I'm using all my stitch holders at the moment for the blanket project. So that's that. These are my sock blockers. So blocking, when you finish a knitted or crocheted item, is the sort of stretching it out. It neatens up the stitches, and it sort of gives the thing a finished nice shape. Actually, it's that way around for socks. There we are. You don't really need to block socks, because as soon as you wear them, it effectively blocks them. But it's nice to have a set for taking photos of socks, and particularly, you know, I've designed a few pairs of socks, and it is the easiest way to take nice photos to show the pattern. Spindles. These are drop spindles. You can use these to spin yarn if you don't want to use a spinning wheel or if you don't have a spinning wheel. It's a much slower process, but it's quite fun. I don't do it. I haven't done it for a long time. I've got these 3 lovely spindles. 2 are wooden. One has got this kind of resin top with little flowers in it. The resin has definitely yellowed with age. Has that got a label on it? I think that one does have a name on it, but I can't read it. Anyway, those are my drop spindles. In here, another project bag. This has got a few circular needles that are too big to go in my main circular needle holder that's made of cotton reels, and these needles are just too thick to go through the inside of the cotton reel. It's also got a few sets of double pointed needles that are longer than the ones I normally use. I've got a little ruler, a little magnifying ruler, if you want to be very precise. I'm never very precise, but you never know, one day. More little bags for little storagey things. This is a cross-stitch thread holder. Shouldn't really be in here, but it's fine. Wooden beads and buttons, and also I think in here, yeah, a set of fasteners for a sort of cardigan or jacket. I'm wondering actually whether they might work on the fur jacket that I'm going to sew. Possibly not. In here, those are pins for blocking. You can use normal pins as well. There we go. Okay, the rest of those should go in that other bag. Knitting needle gauge. If you're not sure how big your knitting needle is, can't see a label on it, you just pop it through the holes, and the smallest one it fits through tells you the size that it is. I have several of these because I'm always looking for them. And a little ruler. I don't think there's anything in this tin. No, just, you know, little tins, always useful to have. Double pointed knitting needles. So I use these for knitting socks, gloves, mittens. You could use them for knitting sleeves of garments. I don't have any in very big needle sizes, so yeah, I don't usually use them for that. I've also got this little set. I think these are, I can't remember, I think these are the higher ones, and are they flyers? I can't remember what the name is for them, but anyway, you buy these as a little set of 3, and you can use them instead of these double pointed needles to do that circular knitting. I found I didn't really like them. I've only tried them once, and I just found the little short length of needle felt quite uncomfortable in my hand, but I might get used to it, and so I'm going to keep them, and I'll maybe try again at some point. It's supposed to be quicker if you can work with it, because you're spending less time moving the needles around in your hand, so we'll see. Nice little holder for those, I like that. This is my crochet hooks. Some of them, they do tend to fall out of here. There's also a latch hook here for rug making. I've never used it, but it was my grandmother's, and I thought, well, I'll hold on to that in case I ever decide to use it. And then at the bottom, we've got straight knitting needles in a Catkidson knitting needle holder. We've also got, oops, a whole bunch of, I should just get rid of these, but I can't really bring myself to. These are old knitting needles that were my grand's. And some of them you can see are in, that is the old English sizing. I don't know what equivalent that is in modern sizing. So is that 6 on the end there. And then at the bottom, a random selection of very thick needles and crochet hooks that have fallen out of the crochet hook holder. And another, these are too long to fit, another knitting needle holder. And again, that's a knitting needle gauge, but that is a gauge marked in the old sizing rather than the metric sizing. So yeah, you can see things slightly fall to the bottom, the less likely I am to be using them, as is ever the way, I suppose. So let's put all of these back in here. I don't know whether I might just get rid of those drop spindles. I don't use them. might be able to sell them on. Not sure. It's been quite an interesting thing with the knitting world over the last 10 years where, you know, there was this great resurgence in knitting and you could get all sorts of interesting products and particularly beautiful hand-dyed yarns, and lots of them were made by small companies in quite limited quantities, and so they were very highly sought after, and they therefore held their value really well, and you could often sell things on for the same price you originally paid for them, or very little discount. That has very much slowed in recent years, not pandemic related, before that as well. Yeah, and I think people have sort of realised there's a limit to how much stuff they need and how much yarn they need that they aren't actually knitting with. So anyway, so that is everything in the IKEA unit. I'll just get and show you what's in the baskets and bowls on top of it. So what have we got? This is a little bowl full of scrap yarn. It's all sock weight yarn and it's all sparkly, and that's why it's in that bowl, because it's all sparkly. I've no idea if you can see that on the camera, but you can definitely see it in real life. So that's my sparkly yarn. This is a little set of mini skeins that I bought, or several mini skeins that I bought from Lay Family Yarn. I'd not used them before. People had said they recommended them. I thought they had really lovely colours. I can't remember why I thought I really needed a set of mini skeins, because as you see, I have quite a lot of scrap yarn in this sort of quantity. But anyway, no, I know why. It's because I didn't have a lot of scrap yarn in these sort of low volume colourways, these pale colourways. And although I'd be unlikely to knit a whole garment in that, sometimes that is what you want for a contrast colour. I would be likely to knit a whole garment in that, and I don't know why I thought I needed that. I think I probably just liked it. So that's mini sock skeins. And then there is another bowl that these have come out of. And I just thought this interesting. I bought this years ago. This is Posh yarn. I made a beautiful pair of socks out of this yarn and I really loved wearing them. And I also made a hat, maybe something else, I can't remember. I had 2 skeins anyway, and I used a lot of them. But I just think it's interesting because this is the same colourway, but it does show the thing about hand-dyed yarn. Even within the same colourway, you won't get 2 skeins the same. This has got a lot more of the bright yellow and green in it, and this has got much less, and it's got more of the sort of faded green and the sort of creamy colour. If you're going to knit those into a garment, what you don't want to do is knit all of this and then all of this, because you will notice the difference. There will be a dividing line in your garment. So often what people recommend is that you alternate. You could do maybe 1 row of this and 1 row of this, or 2 rows of this and 2 rows of this, and alternate so that it's much more all mixed up together, because they do go together. They are the same. They're just in different proportions. Yeah, but I still really like that, and I want to use that up one day. And then we have the Tower of Shame, this is the yarn that was hiding. So again, it's Posh yarn. This is Eleanor. This is a sport weight yarn, which is between 4-ply and double knitting. I like it for garments. I think sometimes a double knitting is quite a thick, warm, bulky garment, and a sport weight yarn is very wearable. Anyway, there's a garment quantity of that. So this is sock yarn, this is sock yarn, this is sock yarn. These are all from commercial sock yarn companies, Opal and West Yorkshire Spinners. This is, I can't remember where this is from. I had several skeins of this and I've knitted a scarf, and this was the sort of leftover of that. It's a double knitting, I think. And then these, you want to be not fooled by the fact that it says Design Club DK. This is not double knitting yarn. This is from, I bought this in Iceland, but it is made in Denmark. And it is 100 grams, you get 540 meters. So it's actually, I would say it's a heavy lace weight. For a sock weight, you'd expect to get about 400 meters. For a lace weight, true lace weight, 600 to 700, super fine lace weight, more than that. So I would say this is this is really a lace weight yarn. I've got it in these 2 colourways and I have no idea what I'm going to do with that ever, but I like them. So that's the basket with the Tower of Shame. And then there is just one more basket. And so it begins with these 4 wound up skeins. These are all sock yarns. And then this is the basket of sock yarn scraps. Some of these could equally well be in some of the drawers that I showed you earlier, but they just happen to be on the top. A lot of the very tiny scraps are in this basket, but you know, some of them are bigger amounts. Here, this is some that I'd previously used in the blanket that's going to be the poncho. Yeah, all sorts. And I think that is all I have to show you. I have quite a lot of yarn, but if the pandemic has taught us anything, I mean, I hope it's taught us lots of things, it is that you can never have too much stash, because you never know when you're suddenly not going to be allowed to go shopping for months. And I had, at the beginning of lockdown, a sufficient stash that I was able to sew, I don't know, a dozen garments and knit for the foreseeable future. And that helped a lot. Please tell me that I'm not the only one with a large yarn stash. Please tell me that I'm not the only one with yarns that I have no idea what I'm ever going to do with. Yarns that I bought for a reason and then decided not to. I'm quite pleased with that. Actually, I do only have 2 sweater quantities. I've not got large amounts of yarn that I'm thinking, oh, I ought to make jumpers out of that. Most of these can be socks or scarves or hats or gloves or, you know, those sorts of smaller projects, and it doesn't go off. So it's fine. Good, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this didn't go up when I had originally intended it to. I'm hoping it is recording this time. Next time I will be back with, well, sewing and stitching. There has not been very much sewing and stitching. There has been quite a lot of sewing and stitching related acquisition, and there has been some work on a project that I'm hoping maybe some of you might like to join in with. So stay tuned for that.